with you once again, and oh yes, we are still in a celebratory mood around here. We are just over a week removed from the death of Osama Bin Laden, and you know, it's still a bit of a reflective mood and a jubilant mood around these parts. You know, again, just to think back on what a great accomplishment this has been for America and humankind, and to reflect on the trials and tribulations and the sacrifices that have been made over the last 10 years. It just really makes you realize what a great place this is and a great country this is, and how indomitable the American spirit can be. So yes, there's a lot of happiness and a lot of joy still around here because of this. And on a much lighter note, hey, the Boston Bruins are in the Eastern Conference Finals now. They swept the Philadelphia Flyers. So nothing could be wrong with the world, could it? Everything's come to roses. Well, maybe there's some people that want to put a little bit of rain on our parade here, if you will. And I suppose what we'll talk about today is something that we should have seen coming, although you hoped it wouldn't happen, but it started to pop up a little bit. And that is the fact that there are some people out there, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's a large number of people. I'm not even saying that it's most liberals. It's a small number of liberals that I'm pointing this to. But there are some people out there who, I guess, on even the most sunny day, they could go out and find a cloud. Even in the most positive of stories, the most positive of situations, they can still find something to complain about. Well, it's a little hard to appreciate that mentality, but some of these people have popped up in the wake of the Bin Laden death, and so we'll talk a little bit about that today. You know, for a couple of days after the news of Bin Laden dying came down, you know, we were as unified as a nation as we've been in 10 years. You know, it's truly the one true feel-good moment I think we've had as a nation in over a decade. And I know some of you will point to the election of Barack Obama, but that was a feel-good moment for only half the nation. Thank you very much. The death of Bin Laden was a feel-good moment that truly the whole nation could partake in, and truly we were at one. But a couple of days after that, you started to see some cracks in the foundation. And again, small cracks, minor cracks, but you started to see on Facebook a few people start to make the rounds with some quote that was attributed to Martin Luther King Jr., which turned out to be entirely false, but some quote about, I will not take pleasure in the death of one man, not even my enemy, as though there was something wrong or something to be frowned upon about enjoying or celebrating the death of Osama Bin Laden. Oh, give me a break. So that made the rounds. And then a couple of days later, there was a news conference where some reporter asked President Obama, was the killing of Osama Bin Laden legal? Who in the hell cares? Well, that's my first thought, but nevertheless, somebody from the press asked it anyway, and you know, Obama, you know, answered the question, basically saying, "Yes, you moron. Of course it was." Geez, how weird is this? I'm holding up for Barack Obama in a press conference. Man, down is up and up is down. But you know, I have to say, the ridiculousness was the question, not Obama's response to it. You know, why would it matter if what happened to Bin Laden was, you know, legal or illegal or met some legal standard of some kind? The guy was a danger, and he was the man who killed so many Americans. What the hell do legalities have to do with it? And then, you know, once that question was asked, I saw on CNN that week that, you know, on a program on one of the mornings, or one of the weekday mornings, they had this big discussion of whether killing Bin Laden was legal, and they did this big poll for people to text in their votes, and I'm like, how ridiculous is this to have that kind of discussion? How moronic is it to have the number one enemy of the free world, the man who's caused more pain and heartache and destruction than any man in recent memory to America, and then wonder if it was okay that we killed him? What the frappuccino? You're kidding me, right? And if that weren't enough, then Rosie O'Donnell and Michael Moore opened their big yaps. And I'll give you some information of what they said. Now, again, let me reiterate. I am not painting all of you liberals with the same brush here. I do not believe, in this case anyway, I do not believe that the comments of Michael Moore or Rosie O'Donnell or those members of the media who are questioning the legality of our killing bin Laden, I'm not saying that they represent you. I thoroughly believe that most of you liberals and most of you Democrats out there, even if you are somewhat uncomfortable with torture, waterboarding, or advanced interrogation techniques, or even those of you who are uncomfortable with America going out and killing an enemy, even at that, I think most of you still realize that, hey, bin Laden's the most dangerous dude on the planet, and I think you'll willingly make an exception to the rules for him, and understandably so. So I'm not painting all of you with a broad brush this time, but there are a few knuckleheads among you who are raising some questions that, quite frankly, never should be raised. So talking about, first of all, Michael Moore, he tweets that bin Laden's death was an execution. Oh, Michael, you're damn right it was. How could it not be? And an execution was totally in order. How can you dare criticize that or impugn that in any way? And in the Huffington Puffington Post, Moore goes on to say that, after World War II, we just didn't go in and put a bullet to the head of all the top Nazis. We put them on trial, as though we should have put Osama Bin Laden on trial. What Moore is overlooking there, and what a few of the moonbats on the left habitually overlook, is that the war, World War II and the war against Germany and Hitler, etc., was a war against the nation state. It was a war of army versus army. It was not a war where civilians were being targeted in any large number or anything like that. It was under the conventional rules of war. Those things, when they talk about the Geneva Conventions and stuff like that and the rules of war, the rules actually applied to some extent there. I'll grant you. But the war on Middle Eastern culture, the war on terror, the war on terrorism, or whatever you want to term that war as, that is not a conventional war. This is not a war with a nation state. This is not a war between the United States and another country. This is a war between the United States and a culture. This is a war between the United States and an ideology. It is a war between the United States and a way of thinking. You might even go so far as to say it's a war between the United States and a religion. There, I said it. Yeah, it's the one thing we're not supposed to say, right? Well, sorry, it is. So, you've got an enemy who is attacking our civilians not as collateral, as a collateral damage or any sort of side effect. That is what they come to do. They are intent on killing civilians, period. That's who they're going after. It's almost like killing military members is collateral damage to them. They're after the civilians. So right there, they have violated the constructs of war. They violated the rules of war right there. So we know we're at war with an enemy who is not following the rules. So we can't follow the rules. We have to survive. So Moore completely overlooked that and overblew that. And he's completely off the mark on it, as you would expect. And then Rosie O'Donnell chimes in. And she comes out with, I'm quoting, "You don't want to become what you loathe. Wasn't the whole point of this that we are not monsters?" No, Rosie. The point of this was not that we are not monsters. The point of this was freaking survival! Get it through your head, bitch. Now, I don't care if we're viewed as monsters or not. They want to kill us. They want to destroy our culture, period. This is not a situation where they want some sort of a diplomatic resolve to this. They are not a nation state. They are not a country. They want us dead. Get that through your head, O'Donnell and Moore and all of you extreme leftist liberals. They want us dead. So that means we have to kill them. That's what the war is all about. So you can take all your high-minded academic crap and shove it up your ass. O'Donnell and Moore, and those in the media who are criticizing this, those few that are, they are indicative of a mentality that we often see out of the left on a wide variety of issues, that that cares more about the procedure that is undertaken than the results of the action. What do I mean by that? Well, in this case, you've got Osama Bin Laden, who has killed thousands of Americans, who is putting Americans in danger each and every day, and they are more concerned that he goes through some sort of due process. They are more concerned that he has a trial than they are about the safety of Americans. They are more concerned about the process of bringing Osama Bin Laden to justice than they are concerned about whether or not he is brought to justice. That's sickening. That's sickening, and yet we as a society tolerate that viewpoint. You know something? Back in my grandparents' generation, if someone in the public eye would have come out and said, you know, well, it's just not right that we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, someone would have slapped the hell out of them, and it would have been justified. Sadly, we don't seem to do that today. As I said before, your people like your O'Donnells and your Moores and your journalists, they have got to finally get it through their head what we've been telling them for a decade. This enemy does not play by rules. They do not play by laws. They do not care about conventions. The Geneva Conventions can go right out the window with this war. They do not apply. Get it through your head. All of you liberals that want to talk about war crimes and Geneva Conventions, to hell with that. None of them apply. The Hague doesn't have any authority over this. The United Nations, none of their damn business. This is about survival. And you've got an enemy who, no matter how many rules we apply to, or no matter how we try to do things just so, they're only going to take advantage of it. Hell, for 10 years, they've used our adherence to rules and conventions and procedure and protocol and diplomacy. They have used that to their advantage. We must take that advantage away from them. We must get as down in the mud, as dirty, as nasty as they are, and more so. If we are going to win this war, if we are going to survive, if we are going to eliminate Middle Eastern culture and thereby prevent them from eliminating Western culture, we must be just as depraved, just as sick, and just as inhumane as they are. Now, the common response to that, whenever you hear someone who actually has enough guts to come out and say it, the common response to that is to hear people say, that's just not who we are as a country. And you talk about waterboarding and torture and the execution of Bin Laden, and they say, well, that's not who America is. We're better than that. We can't think to that level. Let me be very clear. If America and Western culture is to survive the 21st century, if that's not who we are, as you say, then it damn well better be what we become. This is about survival. This is not about some high-minded academic ideal. This is not some term paper for your comparative political systems class. This is reality. This is life and death. And it's high time some of you people on the left got with the damn program and saw this for what it is. Hell, even your president deep down figured it out, at least temporarily. Now some of you moonbats over there better get with the program too. Due process for Bin Laden, go to hell. We gave him his due process, we gave him a bullet to the head. And yet there's people saying, well, he wasn't armed, he didn't have a gun, he did have a gun, nobody knows, did he have a gun or not? Who cares? We saw Bin Laden, we killed Bin Laden. That's all that needed to happen. That's the extent of the due process he was entitled to. Did the thousands of people in the World Trade Center get due process? No, they didn't. Well, Bin Laden, you got just as much due process as they did. You got just as much of a trial as they did. Hell, you got more of an opportunity than they did. You knew we were hunting you down. So it's sickening to me to see people wrap themselves in legalities, wrap themselves in laws, wrap themselves in conventions, instead of fighting a war that must be fought. And what I think some of these people, what escapes them and what they don't realize, because they're so disconnected from reality, they're so intent on following the academic tradition of how we do things rather than the realistic tradition. These people sometimes overlook the fact that legalities, laws, legislation, governments can only do so much. Justice systems can only do so much. That no matter how well intended or well constructed that a justice system is, or that laws are, or that conventions are, no matter how well-meaning or well-constructed it is, it cannot, in any case, it cannot anticipate everything in every situation that could possibly happen to human beings. The legal system has not yet been constructed that can properly anticipate and deliver justice to every single possible situation that a human being can encounter. As great as the American legal justice system is, even it can't pull that off. There are going to be times where a situation is so egregious, so over the top, and so obvious that due process, a justice system, or laws cannot deal out justice the way it needs to be dealt out. That a legal system, in whatever form it is, cannot be constructed in such a way that it can swiftly and appropriately apply justice as it's needed to the most egregious situations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling for anarchy, but what I'm saying is that the best justice systems in the world, and I would include America in that conversation, the best justice systems can take care or can apply justice to the majority of issues that a human being will face, but it can't account for everything. And for those times that it cannot account, for those times that the justice system is not constructed to deliver that swift and certain justice that is necessary, then yes, human condition and situation calls for us to go outside of the law, for us to go outside of whatever judicial system is there. I know that's tough for some liberals to hear, but there are times that some Wild West justice and some vigilante justice are exactly what's needed. And that those type of justices can solve a problem much more so than a legal system, much more so than a court system, much more so than a military tribunal, or any other way you want to name of meting out justice swiftly and appropriately. There are some very few occasions where that is the case, and I think Osama Bin Laden was clearly one of those occasions. But yet, some on the left are so obsessed with our laws, so obsessed with our legal system, so obsessed with due process, so obsessed with the bureaucracy that they worship, that they refuse to see that there are some situations where justice can only come at the end of a gun and not through a court of law. This is about survival. I've said that many times tonight, but it's true. This war is about survival. It's not about, it's not what other wars through history have been. It's not about taking land. It's not about conquering a territory. It's not even about one political system versus another. And as the Geneva Conventions and the rules of war, the laws of war that we're familiar with, were constructed for those old school type of wars, this is a new school type of war that requires a different mentality. Those conventions, those rules, those due processes are antiquated for this type of war. And we have to be flexible enough as a nation, as a culture, as a people to be able to mete out justice as it is necessary and not get hung up with law, not get hung up with due process. Not get hung up with the procedure for how an Osama Bin Laden is brought to justice. It is a cliche, and I know this. But sometimes we have cliches because they're true. And I'm going to give you one right now, and I believe it thoroughly applies here. In this case, with Osama Bin Laden, the ends really do justify the means. No trials, no due process, no lawyers, no platform for him to espouse his anti-Western, anti-American, anti-Christian garbage on a stand in front of a judge. To hell with that. The U.S. military was the judge, the jury, and the executioner, just as they should have been all along. And my hat's off to Barack Obama for doing it. And any of you peaceniks, any of you overgrown flower children that don't like it, go somewhere else, because you're not an American and you're not fit to breathe our air. This is America's Evil Genius. We'll see you next week.